Hello, and welcome to Motivation Station's Read Aloud. I'm Mrs. Campbell, and today the story that I will share with you is entitled The Relatives Came. I was instantly able to make a connection to this story. I took a picture walk through the story, and it just reminded me of when I was younger and our relatives would come to visit. They actually lived in Florida, and at the time we lived in New York and then New Jersey, and they would come visit every summer. Or we would go down to Florida. So I have a map here of the United States of America. And here is Florida, where we live now. But at the time, we lived all the way up here in New York and then New Jersey. And our relatives would come to visit, and they would have to travel from way down south because they lived in Miami, Florida, which is very south. And so they would come up from Miami and travel all the way through first Georgia and then South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and then Maryland, and then or DC into New Jersey. And then if we lived in New York, they'd have to go a little bit further into New York. We lived in Brooklyn, New York, and they would come to visit. So this story talks about family having to pack up, get in the car, and come to visit. And I related to it right away. There was actually one page in the story that brought back memories because there's everyone sleeping, but there's not enough beds for everyone to sleep, so people had to sleep on the floor. And it was the same for us in our house. And we lived in a very small house in New Jersey, and so there wasn't much space. And so if you were lucky enough to get a bed, good for you, because everybody else had to get sleeping bags and comforters and sleep on the floor. But we didn't mind because it was just so much fun to have everybody there, and dinners was great. Everybody helped to cook, and then we all ate, and we played cards, and we played board games. So much fun. Family means a lot to me, so this story brought back some memories for me. So that was the connection I was able to make. Okay, so let's get to the story. The Relatives Came. This story is by Cynthia Ryland, and it's illustrated by Stephen Gamble. Stephen Gamble actually won an award for his illustrations. It's a Caldecott Award, and it's an honor given to artists of children's picture books, and he won an award, so he will forever be known as illustrator Stephen Gamble award-winning, Caldecott award-winning illustrator. What an honor. The relatives came. It was in the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. They had an old station wagon that smelt like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches, and up they came from Virginia. They left at 4 a.m. when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. They drove all day long and into the night, and while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and the different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia, but they also thought about us too, waiting for them. So they drank up all their pop and ate up all their crackers and traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. Then it was hugging time. Talk about hugging. Those relatives just passed us all around their car, pulling us against their wrinkled Virginia clothes, crying sometimes. They hugged us for hours. Then it was into the house and so much laughing and shining, excuse me. Then it was into the house and so much laughing and shining faces and hugging in the doorways. You'd have to go through at least 4 different hugs to get from the kitchen to the front room. Those relatives. And finally, after a big supper, 2 or 3 times around until we all got a turn at the table, there was quiet talk, and we were in 2s and 3s through the house. The relatives weren't particular about beds, which was good since there weren't any extras. So a few squeezed in with us, and the rest slept on the floor. Some with their arms thrown over the closest person, or some with an arm across one person and a leg across another. It was different going to sleep with all that new breathing in the house. The relatives stayed for weeks and weeks. They helped us tend the garden and they fixed any broken things that they could find. They ate up all our strawberries and melons, then promised we could eat up all their grapes and peaches when we came to Virginia. But none of us thought about Virginia much. We were so busy hugging and eating and breathing together. Finally, after a long time, the relatives loaded up their ice chests and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. We stood there in our pajamas and we waved them off in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road. Then we crawled back into our beds that felt too big and too quiet. We fell asleep. And the relatives drove on all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses in the different mountains, and they thought about their dark purple grapes waiting for them back home in Virginia. But they thought about us too, missing them, and they missed us. And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about the next summer. Thank you for sharing that story with me. I hope you think about times that you're with your family and the fun things that you do. Make wonderful memories, everyone. Until next time, take care.